What started as an innocent boyfriend friendship in a small town in Linden, California, grew into a horrifying union of sadistic personalities by the time Wesley Shermantine and Loren Herzog reached adulthood. A union the press would call the Speed Freak Killers. Sit back and hear how two bad boys evolved into a terrible twosome that hunted humans just for fun. When their parents thought they were hunting and fishing, these lifelong deviants were planning the details of future atrocities. So sick, it brought hard-edged investigators to tears. Wesley and Loren met when they were just middle school kids. Linden was a small town in the 70s, and activities for youth were limited. The two bonded on the mutual love for hunting and fishing, and spent most of their time exploring the local wilderness and the many abandoned wells. They knew every inch of the country like their own backyards. Schoolmates described them as always together. Loren was a tow-headed, quiet boy, and Wesley a loud-mouthed troublemaker. He was always the one who would create the mess we didn't need. Wesley was a good friend to have, however, rambunctious. But the Shermantine family were known thugs. Nobody messed with them, unless they wanted to buy speed. The family stuck together and roamed through town like a pack of coyotes, causing trouble and taking what they wanted everywhere they went. The reckless behavior went as far back as the 1950s, when local papers reported stories that Wesley's great-uncles and grandfather were locked up for a bad brawl. Wesley Shermantine's dad was a successful contractor who spent most of his time at work. To make up for his absenteeism, he bought Wesley lots of gifts and showered him with cash throughout his childhood. Assets he always shared with his best friend, Loren. His mom was a domineering figure that ran her family with an iron fist. That included plenty of corporal admonishments. Wesley would often take off with Loren to avoid one of his mother's terrible tirades. They'd spend the night partying, hanging out, and exploring abandoned areas. As they grew from teens into young adults, they became regulars at the local bar, the Linden Inn. They shared an apartment together, and their favorite daily pastime was to get and cruise the roads or hang out at the Linden Inn, especially with the owner's daughter, Cindy Vanderheiden. The two unchecked misfits who fed off each other's sicknesses lived life however they pleased, and almost everyone in their wake paid the price. They got away with it for years, but there had been signs. Wesley was known to brag about being able to make people disappear. A woman claimed after he jumped her and held her head in the mud of an empty field and taunted her, "Listen to the heartbeats of people I've here. Listen to the heartbeats of families I've here." Wesley and Loren began their spiteful spree in 1984 for no other reason than a good opportunity. They found Paul Kavanaugh and Howard King sitting in a truck on the back road in Stockton, California. They jumped out of the truck in the middle of the dark night and used their shotguns on the men without ever saying a word, then rummaged their pockets, taking money and valuables. Authorities were unable to find a suspect after the scene was discovered hours later. The same thing happened to Henry Howell in 1984. He was found in his parked car with his face destroyed by the end of it. This time, they took nothing. No suspects were found in that case either. In 1985, Chevy Wheeler told her friends that she was skipping school to go hang out with Wesley. She stood outside the school that morning until Wesley arrived to pick her up. She waved to her friends and got in the car. No one ever saw her again. Wesley and Loren were suspects from the start. Investigators carried out search warrants for their property. They found traces of DNA, but at the time of Chevy Wheeler's disappearance, no testing was available. Wesley was pulled in for questioning, but a lack of physical evidence slowed the investigation.
If I had something to do with Cindy's disappearance, I would have been gone a long time ago.
In 1998, Cindy Vanderheiden went missing after last being seen with Wesley and Loren at her father's bar. Witnesses said they were all talking at the end of the bar and left at the same time. Again, Wesley and Loren were lead suspects, and again, there wasn't enough evidence to charge them. Finally, police caught a break when DNA testing started to show results in 1999. While awaiting positive results concerning Wesley, police took Loren into custody. He quickly caved.
He's a cold-blooded killer, man. I don't know if you guys can understand why I've been so scared of him so long.
In the interrogation, he describes in detail all the horrific deeds he and Wesley had taken part in. He blamed everything on Wesley, saying, "He's a cold-blooded killer, man." Authorities were astonished when Loren began to reveal details to cases they didn't realize were connected. Loren Herzog's interrogation lasted 17 hours. He thought he would be going home after everything was sorted out. That definitely didn't happen. At least not right away. Wesley was charged in the cases of Chevy Wheeler, Cindy Vanderheiden, Howard King, and Paul Kavanaugh. Loren was charged in the cases of Cindy Vanderheiden, Henry Howell, Paul Kavanaugh, and Robin Armtrout. Families of the missing girls and authorities pleaded with Wesley to disclose the location of the missing girls' remains, but he refused. Unless he could have the reward money the families offered for information on their whereabouts. His request was denied. They were both found guilty in 2001. Wesley received a sentence of capital punishment. Loren received 78 years behind bars. That's not the end of this sordid tale, however. Loren's case was overturned in 2004. The appeals court determined his confession was coerced during the long interrogation. In an odd twist of events, Loren struck a deal with prosecutors for lesser charges that got him paroled in 2010. No one was more surprised than Wesley. Angry that his old pal was getting a second chance at life, he decided to come clean in hopes that it would keep Loren locked up. Loren was paroled, but not to freedom. He lived in a secure mobile home not far from the prison with a GPS monitor attached to his ankle. He was only allowed to leave a few hours a day, and any visitors had to check in and out at the gate. Wesley was willing to tell the whereabouts of his target's remains to anyone who would pay. Bounty hunter Leonard Padilla took him up on the offer and agreed to pay him $33,000. He called Loren and told him to get a lawyer because Wesley was releasing maps of the missing girls' locations. Loren Herzog was found later that day. He'd left a note that said, "Tell my family I love them," a move that Padilla accredits to his phone call. In 2012, Wesley turned over the maps to 5 burial sites. Investigators found over 1,000 bones of men, women, and some they identified as local missing teens. Some are still unidentified. They believe Wesley and Loren were responsible for far more missing cases than have been proven. You don't just take a break from 85 to 98, said Padilla's partner, Rob Dick. Wesley says he has more to tell, and that he will release a tell-all book one of these days. We won't be holding our breath. Many of the families of the people found in those burial sites allege that the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office deliberately tampered with the investigation to uncover additional remains in 2012 and have filed suit. Missing persons records and other information relating to the case is missing. according to California State Senator Kathleen Galgiani, who designed a bill to make it easier for people like Wesley to be released long enough to help find remains. In 2018, the case of the speed-free killers was reopened, with the hopes of identifying more bones and finding more burial sites before Wesley Shermantine faces his final punishment. Do you think Wesley and Loren should have been caught sooner? How did they avoid detection for so many years? Where is the missing evidence, and what will reopening the case reveal? Do you think Wesley will ever tell what really happened and where the rest of the remains are? If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to get new content as soon as it's released.